State Senator Kimberly A. Lightford of the 4th Senate District, and also your Illinois Senate Majority Leader. And again, I would like to thank all of you for joining us this evening. I'm excited about our representation from the environmental organizations, the Illinois Sierra Club, that I'm sure all of you are familiar with, Faith in Place, and founder of Clean Community, a not-for-profit organization, and CC Solar Company. The Illinois Sierra Club and Faith in Place, they were some of the lead crafters of this language for the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, and are here tonight to explain this legislation, since so much, again, I gotta tell you guys, was in the language. It could be very confusing to understand. So the founder of Clean Community not-for-profit organization will also give us his perspective as a small new energy business owner. So I wanted to throw in that component because there is a direct link to helping those small companies serve the community. So I wanted that effort to be here. And as we go on tonight, if you have any questions at all throughout the town hall, we're going to have a power hour. We will be having a Q&A period that will start at 5:45. So please put your questions in the chat. We're going to allow for the last 15 minutes to be Q&A. This act is an historic piece of legislation in Illinois that will jumpstart more sustainable, diverse energy jobs. It's also here to help tackle our world's #1 issue, climate change, and lead us to a clearer and safer future. Created this act was also many other programs, such as the Illinois Climate Work, the Pre-Apprenticeship Program, the Clean Energy Prime Contractor Accelerator Program, and Returning Residents Clean Job Training Program. So there is some very significant programs that were created as a part of this act. And there was also the establishment of a statewide clean energy goal of 100% by 2050 and a renewable energy goal of 50% by 2040. This establishes a goal of 1 million electric vehicles on the road by 2030 with state rebates, and it increased energy efficiency in public schools. So again, it's a lot that's in this legislation. I kind of just grouped some of those key programs, and want to remind you again to put your questions in the chat box. So we're going to get started because I want you to hear from Ms. Carolyn Wooten. She is the organizing director at the Illinois Sierra Club. And in her role, she works with staff, volunteers, and coalition partners to build grassroots political power here in Illinois to protect people and the planet. Carolyn has been organizing for a little more than a decade. She looks like she's fresh out of college, but don't let that fool you. She's pretty sharp. Most recently, she co-led the grassroots field organizing efforts for the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, which resulted in the passage of the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. Carolyn, thanks for being a part of this informational town hall meeting on tonight. So glad that you were a lead organizer in bringing all this forth to the General Assembly. I thank you so much for your work. Please explain to us the process of the bill. Carolyn.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and thank you to Zoom filters for making me look younger than I am. So hi everyone, I'm Caroline. I use she, her pronouns, and like the senator said, work for the Illinois Sierra Club. We're a statewide environmental organization, but we're also part of a bigger national organization that I assume many of you have heard of. I'm going to talk a little bit about the people power that it took to pass this bill. And then from there, others will be talking about what's actually in the bill. But wanted to share this story because many of you on the call were probably part of this victory, and it's so important to take time to celebrate all the work that went into passing such a monumental bill, and the fact that it takes so many people all across the state, and it's truly a group and community effort, and we need to keep doing this stuff. So this started back in 2018. The Clean Jobs Coalition, which Sierra Club is part of, which Faith in Place is part of, many groups across the state are part of this coalition, and we're working to build a just and equitable clean energy future for our state. We had passed a bill in 2016 called the Future Energy Jobs Act, which we were really excited about. It jump-started clean energy in our state, had some good equity programs. But around 2018, we knew it's about time to pass another bill. We need to get going. And we had some big picture goals we wanted. We knew we wanted 100% clean energy. We knew we wanted to center economic and racial justice in this work. But we also realized, and we knew we wanted to start working on transportation stuff as well and addressing how much pollution comes from our transportation sector. But we also realized there's a lot of different paths we can take to get to these big goals. So we started by having dialogues all across the state in communities to hear from people about what are their priorities when it comes to building the clean energy economy. And we were able to use those dialogues to directly inform what policy we were going to advocate for. So first we started with conversations, and then we can go to the next slide. And then by 2019, we had a bill written that was informed by all of these dialogues. We were able to introduce it, and we had press conferences all across the state with people in their own communities celebrating that we were introducing this bill and that we were going to be fighting for it. So here we had folks in, I'll be going clockwise from top left, Springfield, Champaign-Urbana, Chicago, Peoria, Carterville, Illinois, the Metro East, and then in the center, Rockford. And we were able to have so many press conferences because there had been so many people involved in writing the bill. It was like, great, we have a bill ready? Okay, let's celebrate, let's get going. So we started with a bang. Next slide. And then 2019 was just filled with action from so many different groups that were part of the coalition and so many different communities. There were 2 massive lobby days where we had more than 500 people get on buses early in the morning, go down to Springfield, talk to their legislators about this bill, and rally for clean energy. We had tons of town halls, very similar to this one, with legislators to talk about this bill that we wanted to pass. In 2019, this was the year when there were all those climate strikes where students were walking out of school to demand climate action. And this was planned very much by students in their own communities, but in a lot of cases, we were able to get in touch with folks planning climate strikes just to let them know about the broader statewide landscape and if they wanted to engage. So a lot of climate strikes included demands around passing at that point we were calling it the Clean Energy Jobs Act. And then lots of in-district meetings with legislators. The picture on the left is Eddie Flores, who's a youth leader in Waukegan, Illinois. Waukegan has a coal plant that is going to be retiring, but that has caused a lot of health problems in the community for many years. And also folks in Waukegan have been organizing for a long time to build a clean energy future and have a just transition for their community. And one thing I should acknowledge is, the way Springfield works is a little bit messy. You introduce the bill you want to pass, and then you have to really build a lot of support behind it. And usually things are negotiated. So our original bill was the Clean Energy Jobs Act, looked a little different than the bill that we've passed now, but we knew we wanted to build as much power behind our top demands so that once things had to get negotiated, we would have the most power and be able to get as much of the stuff we wanted in a final bill. So this was a lot of what this organizing was about, making sure that communities that were driving the conversation and making sure that we were prioritizing climate and equity. So that was 2019. 2020 also started out with a bang. We delivered more than 20,000 petition signatures to Governor Pritzker saying we needed to pass a climate bill. And then the governor made a really strong statement about making sure we pass a bill that is written by communities and not by utility companies. Had another big lobby day in early March of 2020, where more than 700 people came. So we were really ready to pass a strong clean energy bill in 2020. But then, of course, next slide. 2020 was not what we expected. Global pandemic, also huge uprisings in the summer of 2020 demanding racial justice. And so there's a lot going on that year. We did not pass a bill, but one, it reaffirmed that we need to be prioritizing racial justice in this bill. And two, we were still able to come together and advocate for our goals. In the fall, we had our first virtual lobby day that more than 1,000 people signed up for, and we were able to have a virtual rally that was actually pretty fun. We had a DJ and that Faith in Place secured, shout out to Faith in Place. And it was kind of fun being able to meet with our legislators on Zoom. It was a little bit more laid back and less rushed than in Springfield. So this is a picture of a virtual rally. And then 2021, once again, we started the new year and we were like, this is the year we're passing a clean energy bill. And it was a roller coaster. Next slide. So spring of 2021, we started being able to do some in-person actions again. A bunch of folks from downstate went across the river to protest Ameren, Illinois, which is, or Ameren, which is the utility that serves a lot of downstate Illinois, because Ameren was spreading a lot of misinformation about the bill. We had another huge virtual lobby day. A huge thing that happened that was really helpful. As I said, a lot of this is about building political power behind your priorities. And we knew that negotiation was happening. And we had 50 legislators sign on to a letter saying, no climate, no equity, no deal. And that was really helpful because a lot of different people wanted to pass an energy bill. And we were like, we are here to make sure it's a climate bill and that no communities are left behind. And so having 50 legislators who said this is a priority meant we were going to be able to get a lot of our priorities in. Another big hiccup that happened near the end of session is around one very polluting coal plant called the Prairie State Coal Plant. It's the biggest point source of carbon pollution built in the US in the last 25 years. It's a little bit east of St. Louis. And we wanted to make sure we retired it because it's a huge polluter. It kills more than 50 people every year. I think it's more around 70 people every year. But a lot of forces were trying to keep it open. A huge thing that happened were some key senators and representatives signed on saying that they supported retiring Prairie State. There were a lot of people saying, oh, the municipalities who get energy from this plant are bound by these contracts, need to keep it open. And these legislators really stuck their necks out and said, no, we actually represent these municipalities and we support closing it by 2035. So that was also really useful. Next slide. So May 31st, which was when session ended, we thought, okay, we're about to pass a bill. And then we didn't, partially because of Prairie State, partially because of some other things. But at that point, these activists that we work with who've been organizing for years on this were really upset. And so a lot of things happened. People went to legislators' offices and said, hey, where's our clean energy bill? Had press conferences in front of coal plants that certain interests were trying to keep open. There was a shout out to Oak Park. Some of you all, I think, maybe went to the die-in that happened that young people helped lead. So May 31st came and went and people mobilized and said, we need to pass a bill. Next slide. So June 15th, we thought, okay, this is the day we're going to pass a bill. We'd been told it was when we were going to pass a bill. 100+ people came and rallied in front of Springfield. Once again, we didn't pass a bill. There was a lot of shenanigans going on with negotiations, but people were still mobilizing and pushing for things. So next slide. So again, negotiation happened throughout the summer. People continued to organize in their communities. At the state fair, we had a rally and the governor showed up and the lieutenant governor showed up and we said, get across the finish line. We're ready for a climate bill. And they said, we are with you. They basically said, no climate, no equity, no deal. We're going to do this. A bunch of young people also organized a rally and had our Senate, our chief co-sponsor, come speak at it. So that was also a highlight from the summer. Next slide. And then there was a ton of phone banking. Some of you all may have participated in this. Sitting at home and calling strangers is not like the number one thing I want to do, but it's really useful because we can call them and say, listen, your legislator needs to hear from you. And then they call their legislator. And that made a huge difference. And people were phone banking all throughout this summer. And that was another really key piece of the organizing pie. So after all that, this fall, we were finally able to pass a bill. It was the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. We were able to celebrate the bill signing at the Shed Aquarium. Governor Pritzker, I think he choked up a little bit while he was signing it, which is pretty, meaningful. It is a big deal. And it would not have happened without hundreds and hundreds of people all across the state pitching in where they could. Some people for many hours a week, some people maybe came to a lobby day, some people maybe signed a petition, everything added up, and we couldn't have done this without grassroots power. And I think that's the end of my presentation. And now we're going to actually be able to hear about the bill that we passed.
Awesome. Thank you much, Carolyn, for giving the audience a more clear version of the process of the bill. Many people seem to think that, legislators sit back and come up with these grand ideas and we just throw them out there. I don't know that they're totally aware of the advocacy and the work and the time that's put into the process of developing many pieces of legislation that becomes actual law. So again, I thank Carolyn, the Illinois Sierra Club for their efforts to get this bill passed and signed. And I also would like to thank all of the advocacy groups who put their time and work in to make this happen. And a special thank you to the governor for coming forward and saying that it's going to be the voice of the people, the consumers who he's interested in drafting this legislation. So I really get excited when I revisit things of this nature. I know that this isn't one of my areas that I'm really good at or focused on, but when I have members of the community like Pastor Scott or Nikki, who's up, he's always texting, keeping me informed. I know what's happening. I know when and what to get involved with, and I'm excited to bring him on next. He is the policy director at Faith in Place, working to educate, connect, and advocate for equitable environmental legislation across Illinois and beyond. Most recently, he worked with legislators as well as the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition to pass the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which is CEJA. He also serves as the pastor of St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church, a 103-year-old historic church on the south side of Chicago. Welcome to the west side. And under his leadership, the church has grown tremendously. Pastor Neek believes, and I may be chopping up the name, so forgive me, Oniki, believes that volunteering his time to community efforts is an integral part of his ministry. He is currently serving on several community boards and commission. I'll always just call him Pastor Scott so that I stay away from chopping up the last name because my last name has been chopped up for so long. And then when Mayor Lightford showed up, I became Senator Lightford all over again. So Pastor Scott, can you please talk to us about the highlights of the bill from your perspective?
Thank you, Senator Lightford. And thank you so much for your work behind the scenes to get this big piece of legislation over the finish line. It was voices like yours that encouraged so many of the other legislators to get on board to understand how pivotal this would be to our economy as well as our goals on climate justice. So the Climate Equitable Jobs Act, Illinois has just passed the nation's most leading equitable and comprehensive climate action. So after 3 years of advocacy, decades of building power for people and the environment, Illinois finally put the needs of the people and the planet over the demands of the fossil fuel interests. And so we are so excited that this piece of legislation is now law, Public Act 102-0662. And so to get an understanding of how comprehensive this bill is, there are several areas that the bill covers, or the act covers. It's jobs and economic justice, renewable energy, inclusive financing, energy efficiency, carbon-free power, electric transportation, just transition for fossil fuel communities, and utility accountability and grid planning, and for low income relief. And so we understand that we're not gonna be able to cover everything in the act because there's so much, but we do want to talk about a few areas that we want to highlight. Especially, I want to talk about jobs and economic justice, renewable energy, inclusive finance, and electric transportation. I may touch on a few other things as we move forward. So, as we look at the bill itself, there are some key highlights that I want to express. Next slide, real quick. First of all, the Climate Equitable Jobs Act by the numbers, $82 million a year investment in workforce development and contractor equity programs. You're going to hear from a small business owner tonight, and this will directly impact his business. $82 million a year in workforce development and contractor equity programs. $41 million a year invested in former fossil fuel communities to make sure that those communities remain whole in the just transition process as they lose tax dollars. $41 million allocated there. $380 million a year investment in renewable energy. This is important because as we move forward to a 100% renewable economy, we want to make sure that we're investing in the right programs for renewable energy. And so $380 million there. Then we also have $100 million a year for carbon-free power sector. And then 50% renewable energy by 2040 is one of our goals. And then this is a very aggressive goal, but we know we can do it. 1 million electric vehicles off the road by 2030 in the state of Illinois. And so keep in mind this other number, 40% of the benefits and investments in solar power, electric vehicles, and grid must go to equity investment eligible communities as well as persons. Next slide. And so the first area is something that we're all very concerned about, and that's jobs and economic justice. Jobs and economic justice. So when we think about jobs and economic justice, first of all, we wanted to define equity eligible communities. And so throughout the new law, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act targets and considers what is equity. So explicitly, it benefits to newly defined equity eligible persons and equity eligible communities, which are among other criteria residents of environmental justice or R3 areas. Now, real quick to break down those, because you'll hear terms like environmental justice communities or R3 communities. Well, the environmental justice communities are communities that have been identified through a calculation utilizing the US EPA tool, EJ Screen, and demonstrate higher risk of exposure to pollution based on environmental or socioeconomic factors. The R3 zones are simply developed when they pass the cannabis legislation, and this is to restore, reinvest, and renew. R3 areas are communities that have been harmed by violence, excessive incarceration, economic disinvestment. And so when we think about these areas, we know that these areas are throughout the state. And so we will be able to make sure we uplift these communities. Next slide. And so what does the Climate Equitable Jobs Act do? When you think about workforce training programs, these 4 boxes outline some of the impact that's going to happen to workforce. So clean job workforce hubs, 13 strategically placed workforce hubs throughout the state of Illinois. One of those being on the west side of Chicago. And so if you want to get trained for energy jobs, this will be the time and the place you can do it. Those 13 workforce hubs across the state run by community-based organizations to provide clean jobs training and career pipeline for equity eligible individuals. It will be overall managed by DCEO, and $21 million a year is set aside strictly for the development of the workforce hubs. Also, the Illinois Climate Work Pre-Apprenticeship Program. This will be largely a pre-apprenticeship program that is connected to our unions, trains equity eligible individuals for careers in clean energy sector, construction, and building trades. It'll be overall managed by DCL also, but $10 million a year set aside for that. Something I'm super excited about because of a passion, returning residents clean jobs training program, train soon to be released. Get this now, soon to be released individuals who are currently incarcerated, but those people will be trained for jobs in solar and in the energy efficiency sectors. And so $6 million a year is set aside just for that. And then the Energy Transition Barrier Reduction Program. This is important because small businesses need to make sure they have opportunity to participate in this emerging economy, which we call the clean energy or renewable economy. So it provides resources for placement and retention to break down barriers that were once there and prevented those individuals who wanted to participate but couldn't. So the training programs, also Energy Transition Navigators, will provide education, outreach, direct recruitment, so that those individuals that are interested can participate in workforce development programs. Then again, $6 million for that. Next slide real quick. So as the legislation continues, there is a Clean Energy Contractor Incubator Program. Now that incubator program for a emerging small business, that takes that business who wants to transition maybe from construction, maybe from just being an electrician, to learn the business of solar installation and providing solar service. Those incubator programs are directly geared towards bringing up those contractors, and they will be housed in those same workforce hubs and throughout the state. And then there's the Clean Energy Prime Contractor Accelerator Program. Well, we know that in order to talk about equity, you need to level the playing field. And so we want to make sure that the Clean Energy Prime Contractor Accelerator Program does just that, accelerates contractors seeking to expand their capacity to fill the role as a prime contractor. That's where the big money is at, as a prime contractor. Then they can go and select subcontractors to do the job. So the accelerator offers a structured 5-year program with mentorship, operation support grants, business coaching, and assistance applying for certifications, procurement programs, and preparing bids. And so those cohorts are accepted every 18 months. The program will be operated in 3 regions: Northern Illinois, Central Illinois, and Southern Illinois. And then also prevailing wage support. One of the things that this bill did was provide an avenue for those that are working in this industry to receive prevailing wage on projects that are over 25 kilowatts. Well, that may be a little strenuous for a small business, but just think if you get prevailing wage support that allows you to have the support in reporting prevailing wage, so you do not have that administrative burden when it comes to making sure your wages are paid and reported properly. Next slide. So that's, of course, super exciting. When we think about moving into this expansion, we want to make sure people are able to self-generate. Self-generate is a fancy word for I can generate my own electricity at my house. Well, if you're part of a municipality or co-op customer, that could have been a little strenuous before this act was passed. And so now we have some consumer rights that are implanted: generate, consume, and deliver excess renewable energy to distribute grid and reduce his or her use of electricity obtained from the grid. You'll have that right to use technology to store energy at your own residence. And then you can interconnect his or her renewable energy or energy storage systems in a timely manner, and then receive fair credit for excess energy delivered to the distribution grid. So this is important. This will be done by March 14th. After the passage, we'll be able to update some of the processes to make sure that those that, again, were left out of the process can be a part of the self-generating process. Next slide. And I'm watching my time, so we don't. Energy efficiency. I have energy efficiency is something that we really strongly want to express about how important it really is as we move forward. So there are plans for energy efficiency. The Climate and Equity Jobs Act extends energy efficiency programs past 2030 and expands goals and makes important changes to support low-income homes. So on this slide, you'll see 20 to 25 EE plans, 26 to 29 EE plans. But here's the new plans. When you go into 2030 to 2033, you have plans that will extend out even past 2040 and then renew every 4 years. And so what's the goal? ComEd 21.5% reduction by 2030, Ameren Territory 16% reduction. And so as we move forward, by 2040, we'll see a 30.5% reduction and then estimated 22% reduction. We want to use less energy. We want people to be able to be proud of the energy they use. And so we don't want overindulgence in energy. We want to use less energy. So low income expansion expands low energy programs, efficiency, coordinates utility energy efficiency programs with state weatherization programs. Imagine someone coming in your home and providing you with an analysis on how you can save money, either through insulating or windows. These things are important so that you'll be able to save energy. Health and safety fund, new funds to fix dangerous conditions found in low-income homes. If they were planning to do some energy efficiency upgrades and they found that your home, there's something that's structural that prevents them from doing that, there's money there that you provide to get the fix of the dangerous situation so that you can get the energy efficiency or benefit from the energy efficiency program. And then pay as you save financing program. So if you have some big fixes, that will can appear on your energy bill. And so you pay as you save program. Next slide. So energy, new equity standards. The Climate and Equitable Jobs Act requires utilities to demonstrate how they will ensure that contractors and vendors promote workforce equity and quality jobs. Well, if you don't report it, it might not get done. So data collection is absolutely important. Quarterly reporting on contractors and vendors. Utilities provide education, training, and other resources needed to ensure compliance. And then an annual report on hiring, contracting, job training, and other practices related to employee and vendor diversity. This is absolutely vitally important because we want to make sure what we said we were going to do is actually getting done. If there's adjustments, if utilities are not making progress on workforce equity among contractors and vendors, they must submit a plan to meet the requirements within the following year. There are no, you get a pass. So electric transportation, I don't know how many people own electric vehicles, but there is a provision in the act that authorizes the state to create a $4,000 rebate for purchasing an electric vehicle. Then also an 80% rebate for installing charging stations on your property. And then it requires utilities to file beneficial electrification plans to support electrification and manage grid impacts for charging starting at $41 million a year with at least 40% in equity communities. Now, this is important because when we think about where charging stations are going to go, we want to make sure that they're not only in affluent neighborhoods or neighborhoods that don't represent BIPOC communities. We want to make sure that they're in environmental justice communities or R3 zones. And so at least 40% of those need to be there. And then the EV at Illinois EPA creates an EV coordinator at the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency to oversee EV investments from the capital bill, 70 million with the VW settlement. That was the Volkswagen settlement, and then 70 million to the plan and oversee EV rebates and charging station rebates. So we want to make sure that money is distributed properly. Okay, I'm talking kind of fast. I think I'm running almost out of time, but let me get through the utility accountability grid planning rates quickly. And I know this is a lot, and if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll try to get as many questions in the chat answered as possible. But new ethic requirements and oversight for all utilities. The great thing that the governor said that he wanted to make sure that there was not a utility writing a climate bill. He wanted that bill to be consumer driven. And so we wanted to make sure there's some ethic oversights from the Illinois Commerce Commission. And then we also wanted to see new requirements for all public utilities, electric as well as gas utilities. And so real quick, let me run down these quick bullet points. New Ethics and Accountability Division. Under that ethics oversight, new public utility ethics and compliance, monitor at ICC, 30-day notice of ethic violations, and recommend disciplinary action, develop additional ethic controls for utilities, publish annual ethics and audit of all actions taken, and monitoring, auditing, and subpoena power. And then on the other side, the requirements creates chief ethics and compliance officer, new code of ethical conduct for utilities, personnel, lobbyists, and vendors, monitoring lobbyist activities, prohibits subcontracting to hide lobbyists, requires lobbyists to document all work, requires documentation of anything of value provided or discussed with public officials, and then substantial fines and penalties if you're non-compliant. All right. And so also something that's really important for low-income ratepayers, prohibits late payment fees for low-income customers, prohibits deposit requirements for low-income customers, and then prohibits credit card fees for all customers, and then requires the ICC to establish discounting, and then new reporting requirements on disconnections and credit collection practices. So all of that is in this act also, okay? And all right, so what if you want to stay up to date with the Illinois Climate Equitable Jobs Act, you can join the Clean Jobs Coalition at illinoiscleanjobs.org. You can continue to follow there. If you have personal questions that are not answered tonight, you can direct those questions to myself, Scott, at faithinplace.org, or you can direct them to our policy coordinator, who has been quiet because she wanted me to get through all of these slides, Christina Kroos at christina@faithinplace.org. And again, you can visit our website also. So if you have a house of worship, if you want to lead a workshop for your house of worship, you can sign up by going to faithinplace.org/host a webinar, and we'll be glad to contact you to do anything like this or any of the other subjects that we cover at Faith in Place. And so now Christina's going to feed us some questions from our chat after we turn it back over to our wonderful senator who has been a champion of justice for this Climate Equitable Jobs Act.
Thank you, Pastor Scott. You know, I always enjoy working behind the scenes because I just think I'm much more effective, can get things done. And I don't always tell that story, but this is like one of those things where I was looking at the slides. I didn't see me on one slide. I'm like, Lord, that's okay, because I know what I was doing on the back end, right? So I'm really glad that you're here tonight to give the audience the highlights of the act, and most importantly, you know, how this act will create fair job opportunities, describe the energy efficiency, discuss consumer protections, and how to build out our electric vehicle infrastructure. So I can't thank you enough. And I know you're going to stick around. I want to jump right into Martell Richardson, and then we've got some really, really good questions in the inbox. We're joined tonight by the mayor of the village of Broadview, Mayor Katrina Thompson, my sister. She's got some great questions because that equity piece is always very important to us here in Proviso. And we'll just find out, we'll hear from the mayor, we'll try to answer the questions. So I want to jump right into this young dynamic man, Martell Richardson. So Martell is a 2017 ComEd Construct graduate. Construct came about when I started one of those behind the scene things, started a program with some other non-for-profit organizations through the Illinois Department of Transportation. And we switched over leaderships in the governor's seat, and the governor did not fund the program. And so I went to ComEd and I asked them if they could continue this program on, and they obliged. And Martell was one of the first students of the ComEd construct. And the thing about him, in 2017, he's already now the founder of the Clean Community not-for-profit organization. And then he created a CC Solar LLC. You know, it was a question in the box about companies, for-profit entities having supports if they're not a non-for-profit. So hopefully someone can answer that question. But Martell saw it fit to make sure that his organization also had a not-for-profit arm. Their mission is to serve low-income communities by promoting all things clean. Their purpose is to be resourceful while encouraging healthy living, safe communities, and environments. Martell, if you could share a little bit about being one of those new small minority-owned energy businesses. Martell.
Hi, Senator. How are you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you, Martell, for joining us tonight.
Yes, ma'am. So I'll kind of iterate on what Senator already said. I'm a 2017 ComEd Construct graduate. Upon graduation in 2017, I started Clean Community. Clean Community is a non-for-profit community solar organization where we actually train solar technicians. 2017 was our beginning year. Actually, I started CC Solar in 2019. So this past year in 2020, we actually got our first location for Clean Community, where we actually have a full training facility. We actually have a simulation roof in the office where I train technicians from A to Z to actually put it in. Upon graduation too, I failed to mention this. Upon graduation, I actually worked for Chris Williams over at Millennium Solar. He was a big mentor for me. He helped me get started with CC Solar. Actually, speaking on all those small business opportunities that the CEJA brings is actually really, really, really like, oh my God, I can't even imagine all of the opportunities the CEJA actually brings for a small minority business. So CC Solar is actually an approved vendor for Illinois Solar for All. So CC Solar is actually working with the town of Maywood, the mayor of Maywood and a trustee of Maywood to actually get a community solar garden doing there. We're trying to get all of their town light bills eliminated. So we're a proposed community solar project we're working on there. I actually have another proposed community solar project over in the Austin community, where Clean Community location is located at in the Austin community. I'm working with Pepper's Construction on a community solar garden over in the Austin community. So I look forward to all of the benefits that the CEJA provides for a small business owner to actually flourish in the solar industry. So that's big. That's big. So I want to thank everybody that had a big part of that. It actually drives right into line of what I'm doing. I'm really excited about this. I'm extremely excited about this. I've partnered with a couple other organizations. Balance Solar is one. He's out in Aurora, I believe. I'm helping him do some community solar projects and working through Illinois Solar for All to try to receive some more of those REX credits. So something that the pastor mentioned about was, you get more benefits when you're doing this in those low income communities and those EJ communities. So I'm really big on that. I'm really looking forward to all of the benefits that the CEJA bring. Just so many different things that's opening doors for Clean Community and CC Solar. So I really want to thank the senator for even having me on this town hall meeting to actually introduce myself and build some networking relationships. So that's about all for me.
Senator, you're still on mute.
Yep, you're muted, Senator.
That mute button always get away from me at least once. Well, Martell, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing with us your your journey to where you are, because I know that it can be a motivator for so many people who are interested in going into the energy space, and those who really want to take a stab at becoming a not-for-profit organization or a small business that could help provide some supports to the community. So thanks again for sharing your supports. Now, here's what I want to do, because we're not too far off of time. I just wanted to dive into these questions. I've got to tell you, they're amazing. And there's plentiful. So if the panelists can help me answer these questions that are relative to your expertise, that would be very helpful. I know Mayor Thompson came out swinging. So before I go, she had two amazing questions. But before I go to her, there's a gentleman named Mark Berger that I generally work with in some spaces around energy, and he's from the Oak Park community. He wanted to know, Pastor Scott or Carolyn, you two would know this. Can I verify for how many years the funding for CEJA will continue? Was it put in the legislation?
Yes, it's it'll continue to at least 2050. So because the goal is to be in 2050 for what's to be 100% renewable energy. And so as I showed on that chart, the like the energy efficiency programs where we extended to 2030 and on. So those fundings will go up to 2050.
Great. God willing, I'll still be living when CEJA money will be floating around. And hopefully there can be a, if our goal is to eliminate, maybe there won't be a need to have something like this renewed, but perhaps if there is, I'm pretty sure there'll be hindsight, to continue this program going forward. So let me go down to the next question here. So for me, I supported the Climate and Equity Job Acts because it ensured that everyone would be able to join the industry. And the legislation was strong as it relates to equity. And it required to make investments into disadvantaged communities. And those are all areas that I highly advocate for. Mayor Thompson's question is, what steps are in place to ensure equitable access to training that is driven by affordability to increase diverse representation in the emerging markets of clean energy?
Absolutely, great question. Currently, the act has been passed, and now there is a team of subcommittees that are actually doing what they call the implementation process. So as we start thinking about how is this bill or this act will be implemented, we want to make sure that we dot all of the I's and cross all of the T's, make sure that all of the promises are kept. So in all of the categories that the bill covers, there is a subcommittee that one, like for instance, energy efficiency. Are we going to make sure that the 40% of the infrastructure that's around EV charging stations are met? So how do we make sure that happens? So there's a team that's actually meeting once a week. So once everything gets funded in the budget, we'll know that is actually happening. And then if you notice in one of my slides that we talked about the reporting and accountability, that's throughout the whole bill. There has to be reporting each year that the goals are being met for projects. The bill itself was designed for a company like Martell's company or non-for-profit or even a profit. Somebody asked a question about a profit. If you're a small business, if you're a BIPOC, if you're in a EJ community, there are provisions there to make sure that you are supported in the process of getting into this industry. And so when we think about the $82 million a year towards the workforce hubs, the incubator, all of that money each year is to make sure that the businesses that we design, and you and I have had this conversation, if it's we need to make sure we help underrepresented communities in this piece of legislation. and you charge me and say, go back and make sure it's right and before you come back. And that's what we did. So we went back and make sure it's right. So to the mayor's point, yes, there are provisions there to ensure that it actually happens.
So then let's follow that up with, how do we ensure capable and qualified training providers are given access to contracts? So how do we ensure that the contracts are fairly distributed in our equity space to make sure that happens?
There is an incentive area where, like when a company is bidding for a project, they must actually look at entrepreneurs that have come through either our incubator program or individuals that have come through the workforce hubs to fill the open positions. So a company like Martell's company, if they find that they have some deficiencies in competing, okay, one, they can tap into all of the resources around support for their businesses that will ensure that the administrative needs are met. Also, if there's some funding problems, maybe they can't provide the upfront funding, there's a justice fund that they'll be able to tap into to get some financial support so that they can build up the infrastructure in their company to compete. Then the prime incubator in those 3 locations, that is designed so that Martell could become a prime contractor. Prime contractor is the one that really puts those major solar projects into place. The 1 million kilowatt projects, or the big. So it's designed to develop them to be able to participate in the prime contractor but the row, or the that particular lane. You want to make sure that they're participating in that lane.
Okay, so all of those that are here, and for if you have interested family and friends who were unable to attend tonight, December 15th was the chosen night. There's a lot going on in the community, and perhaps some people could not attend. Please share this information with them. I noticed that both Faith in Place and Sierra Club has put links in the chat where you can connect with them directly to get more detailed information. I want to now go on to the next question that was presented by Mr. Darnell Johnson. Thanks for joining us, Darnell. His question is, what is the plan to connect the newly trained workforce with employers?
Similar to what I just said, where we get the pool of businesses that are actually funneling individuals, and community-based organizations are going to lead this charge with identifying candidates that's good for the program. After those individuals come out of the program, we have to connect them to projects. And so the incentive is that in order for them to get scoring to apply for these dollars that are state dollars, they have to have demonstrated they're hiring and willing to hire individuals that are coming out of these programs. So they have your companies that are bidding for the solar projects have the actual need, not only the incentive, they have the need to make sure they hire individuals that have come out of these training programs.
Okay, and Mr. Darnell Johnson had a follow-up question. I'm not sure if this was answered, but it was kind of in line with Martell. Instead of just all community-based organizations being supported, will there be opportunities for certified small businesses to facilitate as trainers, and not limited to those opportunities to community-based organizations?
It's designed for community-based organizations, but give you an example, his name was already mentioned, Chris Williams. Chris Williams has benefited from the past CEJA legislation. His company, which is a for-profit organization, has benefited from doing, his company actually does the training for the cohorts that currently existed under CEJA through the Elevate sponsored programs. So clearly, we're not going to regress. We're going to be able to have those same kind of opportunities. If there's a company that can do the training, they'll be a part of the workforce hub to participate in the training program. So I don't think it's, it's not like it has to be a non-for-profit that does the training. It'd be who's actually is available or able to do the training.
So for me, I want to know that we created this Energy Transition Workforce Commission to report on the anticipated impact of the clean energy transition and provide that comprehensive recommendations to address the changes to the workforce. We also, within this act, established the Energy Transition Navigators to provide education, outreach, and recruitment to equity-focused populations to ensure they are aware of workforce development programs. So my question is, how can I become a navigator? How can I share with someone how they can become a navigator?
Okay, so are you saying personally, or are you speaking in
I'm speaking in, folks coming to me say, Senator Lightford, I can't find no job.
Okay.
And and you guys just passed this big act, and you're boasting millions of dollars. And I'm hearing they have positions that are navigators that are supposed to educate and provide outreach and training. How can I be a navigator? What would I tell them? Where could I send them? What can I do to get them started?
Okay. I don't know if I can do a step-by-step, but I could say this. You as a senator would probably have the pulse on what community-based organizations, where the workforce hub is going to be located, because that has not been determined yet. We just know it's going to be on the west side. And so on the west side, with DCEO being the administrator, we're going to select could be the Austin community, could be a little further west, but we know it's going to be, one of them is going to be on the west side to serve the west side community. So with that in mind, you would say, this is the location, this is the schedule for the next series of cohorts. These are these are the requirements in order to enter the program. Again, with the returning citizens program, we will determine what location or what jail residency that is going to be placed at. There are a number of them throughout the state, but DCEO will determine what place to house that program at, but it's going to be tied to one of the workforce hubs to be overseen. So you would have direct information, and then you would know whether it's working or not, because the reporting is going to come to y'all, to the legislators.
Okay.
And so
And I know you're going to keep me on it.
Right, exactly.
I know you're going to keep me on.
If you see some deficiencies, you're going to be like, well, Pastor Aqua, we said we're going to do this. What's going on? So
okay.
Your office will definitely be super involved.
Okay, so it's back on me. I accept it. I just wanted to know how to get that going. There's a gentleman named Greg Sherman from ex-cons for Community and Social Change that's listening in, and he's requesting a meeting with me. So hopefully I can be helpful with him with those second chance members returning to the community. This is a great space here to make sure we extend and take a deep dive into that space. Mayor Thompson wanted to know, we have arrived to 6:01. Questions are now piling in. We can try to go as fast as we can. If we lose sight or we have to end this, just log on to one of those links in the website, and I'm sure Pastor Scott and his team over at Faith in Place and Carolyn Wooten and her team over at Sierra Club will be happy to give you a hand. And if all else fails, come back to me and I can help get an answer and give you direction on what's needed as well. But Katrina
Senator,
wanted to know.
Before you go on, the young man that wants to meet with you about the returning citizens, if he could email you the questions that he has, and then you get the questions to me, so we'll have all of the questions answered on the process And so if he can just email you all the questions he needs before he meets with you, you'll have all of the answers, because there are other experts that we can actually dive in and tell you, page by page what can happen with this legislation, so that we'll give them exact and precise answers to his questions. When you say that'd be a good idea, Carolyn? Okay.
Perfect. I'll type my email address into the chat box, and we'll be in touch with you, Mr. Sherman, or you just send me those questions as indicated in the email, and we'll follow up. So
thank you very much.
You're welcome. Mayor Thompson has this question that I'm really intrigued in, because I have no idea what this means. Can you translate 25K kilowatts? Is that kilowatts an hour to wages? And will certified payroll be considered? So Mayor Thompson, you can jump in, honey, if I'm not explaining this well, to ask the pastor and Carolyn your question. Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you to everyone that was on the panel this evening. It was very good to hear.
We lost your video.
Huh?
We lost your video, Mayor.
I can see you.
Yeah, she was on the board. There she is. Okay, there you go. Mm-hmm.
So the question, it came up in the conversation with the pastor as it relates to 25,000 kilowatts. And I wanted to know, what did that translate to wages? We're talking about, I just need to know what the wages are for that.
Okay, so a project that's 25 kilowatts or lower does not have to pay a prevailing wage in this particular act. So those are smaller projects that are designed for individual rooftop homeowners. Okay. They're designed for smaller contractors to be able to emerge into the renewable economy. And so without the burden of paying the exorbitant prevailing wages that could be $60 to $80 an hour, but we recognize a smaller business may not be able to handle those kind of wages. So 25 kilowatts or lower, they don't have to pay prevailing wage, but they would be probably being asked to pay a living wage because they want to get the best candidates to do the work.
Okay, thank you for that clarity, because I was just wondering, because when we talk about prevailing wages versus certified payroll, some that's not in unions have certified payrolls, and we want to make sure that we have equity in our communities where they can take advantage of the project. So like on our commercial businesses or our government structures, we want to be able to make sure that we give opportunities to those that live in our community that may not be union, that need prevailing wages, but they have certified payroll to justify that they are paying livable wages.
Mm-hmm. And that would be projects 25 kilowatts or lower.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. I'm going to add on to that. Then how do you ensure that diverse providers are not only given tier 2 sub opportunities, but also tier 1 prime opportunities, which was one of the final questions that the mayor asked?
Okay, to ensure that is the incubator program, which would bring along BIPOC entrepreneurs to emerge as tier 1 contractors. Mm-hmm. So there, of course, there's going to have to be some training in order to get to be a tier 1. Now, right now, and if I'm not mistaken, there are only about 3 BIPOC solar contractors that were actually actively doing the work. Of course, we wanted to change that perspective by allowing so many more that may be in construction, maybe in electricity, to be a part of this emerging economy. And so, of course, they would have to participate in the program to ensure the support as well as the infrastructure is there, so they'll be ready for it to be a prime or tier 1 contract.
I'm glad you said that, because that lands right into Darnell Johnson's point he's making here. He acknowledged that the EV benefits and rebates are great, but the awareness of the EV benefits is critical to adoption. Is there a comprehensive approach to ensure that BIPOC communities are informed? We all know that it's just targeting that information to Black communities. They miss out every time. How are we ensuring that they are informed?
Carolyn, am I answering too many questions? You want to jump? I don't want to be. Oh,
No, I'm really grateful you're answering all these questions because I do
okay,
not
thank
know
you.
most
Okay.
of these answers.
Okay, that's all right.
So thank you,
I didn't want to be
Pastor.
overlooking you because you know
No,
you're a
I
smart young lady.
appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yes, it did. Okay, so to ensure that it actually works, it behooves those of us, the advocates, that have really pushed for the last 3 years to make this bill a reality. You know, many times sitting in your office, banging on the door, please, please, please. Okay, so we need to make, that's why we're having these implementation meetings. And so the hard work starts now, actually. The hard work, how is this gonna roll out? And how are we gonna make sure that what we promise is gonna happen? So we're gonna be the eyes and the ears of this legislation. We're gonna make sure that DCEO does what they're supposed to do as the oversight or the administrators of the provisions in the bill. So we want to make sure that we ourselves reach out to community-based organizations, pastors, communities of color. The town halls don't stop. The town halls are only beginning because we want to do a whole lot more town halls in communities of color to make sure that people are aware that these programs are available, because they're not going to do any good just sitting on the shelf. We need to communicate to the communities that we knew were divested in to be an active participant in the climate economy. So it's going to be on us. It's not going to be on them. We got to get the information to them. So they shouldn't have to go find it. We should be doing a bullhorn. Hey, this is coming down the pike. This is happening. These are the dates. These are the dates when the workforce hubs are going to start. Please sign your members up. And so it's going to be my job to go around the whole state to different communities to share this information.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I want to close us out tonight. I appreciate the panelists, Pastor Scott and Mrs. Carolyn Wooten and Mr. Martell Richardson for coming on and just giving us this power hour. It's an awful lot to unpack. But I got to tell you, it's one of the most exciting pieces of legislation that's come out of the state legislature, definitely for during this COVID crisis, as it's looking to create more job opportunities to address climate change. And it's so imperative for members of our communities to live their best life and have the best possible opportunity to have a successful career. And we all know that joining this industry, you would need to join on the front end in the very early stages. And then it's so great to know that we have community groups and advocacy groups who say, hey, care about the climate at the same time. So this was very powerful and impactful. I hope that everyone on can go back into the chat really quick and get those links so that you can link up with Faith in Place and link up with Sierra Club and with Clean Communities. Mayor Thompson, thank you for coming on, asking those questions. I realize that Mr. Darnell has a leadership role in your office and he's requesting a meeting. So perhaps I can help facilitate something with you, Mayor Thompson, with you, Pastor Scott, and your team, so that we can kind of figure out a comprehensive approach to ensuring that African-American, low-income, minority communities are aware of this great opportunity and they don't find out on the back end of this opportunity. We want to make sure the equity that you all fought for, we really want to work hard to reach those goals and make it happen. So Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you for taking your time to join us tonight, and God bless all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bless you.
Thank
all right.
Bless you. Bye-bye.